The year is 70 AD, you are in ancient Rome, life is good. You're looking forward to visiting the baths today. Baths are an essential part of Roman life. They're a place to relax and socialize and stay clean. But did you know not all Romans bathed in water? While it sounds crazy to us now, some Romans would rather cover themselves in oil and scrape it off than take a dip in the public bathhouses that everyone else was raving about. So why wouldn't they bathe? Was it just a personal preference thing, or were there some more practical reasons behind it? Welcome to my channel. Today, we will find out. Did ancient Romans bathe in oil instead of water? Even though the Romans loved their baths, not all Romans bathed the same way. Some people couldn't afford it or maybe didn't have time to spare, but most likely it was just a personal choice. For those who could afford it and had free time, but still chose not to bathe in water, their reasoning would probably sound strange to us. Many Romans believed that water would wash away something essential, either dirt, body odor, or even the oils the body produced. Most people took 1 to 2 baths per week, but for those who bathed in oil, it was a very different experience. The process involved covering the entire body in oil, letting it sit for a few hours, and then scraping it off. The oil would pick up dirt and dead skin that had been compiling on the body. It also removed hair, so the oil would go on to be used for cleaning purposes later. Sometimes urine was added to the mix, which helped to loosen up the dirt and grime even more. Those who regularly visited the bathhouses knew that the process of cleansing itself was pretty lengthy. Once the patron arrived at the bathhouse, they would first scrape themselves with a scraper called a strigil. This would remove dirt and dead skin. Next, the patron would lay down and have someone else slap them with a bunch of dried herbs and branches. This served to exfoliate the body and loosen up the oils and dirt. Then the patrons would lather themselves in oil, cover up with a blanket, and wait for the oil to warm up. This might have been the most relaxing part of the entire bathing experience. After laying around for a bit, the patrons would go back to the scraping table and remove the oil, revealing a clean body underneath. The patrons could also pay to have their hair shaved during this process, along with any other unwanted body hair. For those who wanted to save money, they could skip the baths entirely and just cover themselves in oil. If they were particularly dirty, they might add sand to the mix, making an oil and sand paste that could then be applied to the body. Instead of going to a bathhouse, a slave would pour oil on their master and begin the long process of scraping it off. This method wasn't exactly pleasant, but the results were worth it for many Romans. Oil bathing wasn't exclusive to Rome either. It can be traced back to Greece as far as 500 BC there. Oil was considered healthier for the skin and the preferred method of cleansing. Unlike water, oil wouldn't dry up the skin. Those who lived near the Black Sea also had access to special oil from the nearby towns. The oil had special cleansing properties and was transported throughout the empire by merchants. The Romans would buy this oil and use it as an alternative to bathing in water. Even though oil bathing was common, it wasn't necessarily a replacement for traditional baths. Ancient Romans thought the hot, steamy baths were excellent for keeping your body healthy. Besides, there were social aspects of the baths that couldn't be replicated by just covering yourself in oil. In fact, oil bathing was often done after a trip to the baths, as it was a convenient way to maintain cleanliness until the next bath. And it seems oil bathing was popular among men, while women preferred to bathe in water. For women, it was common for them to share gossip and news while socializing in the baths, so they opted for water over oil. Ancient Roman baths weren't just places to get clean. They were community hubs where people went to socialize and relax. As mentioned earlier, the process of bathing in a Roman bathhouse took several hours. Patrons would spend a great deal of time waiting for the oil to warm up, or waiting in line for a masseuse to slap them with a bunch of sticks. Most patrons didn't want to waste all this time alone, so they would bring a book, or perhaps an instrument, and pass the time while waiting for their turn. It was common for friends to meet up at the baths and catch up. Business deals were made and politics were discussed. For many Romans, it was a chance to see what was going on in the community. Some people even made the baths their home. In the winter months, the baths were heated and offered a warm place to sleep for the homeless or those too poor to afford a place of their own. If you were a wealthy Roman looking for a bit of entertainment, you could even watch fights break out between the patrons. Slaves would sometimes be put into the audiences to heckle the fighters, inciting them to violence. These brawls were usually broken up by armed guards, but not before several people received a bloody nose or worse. The benefits of visiting the baths regularly, however, cannot be overlooked. For many Romans, the baths played a key role in preventing disease. Going to the baths and covering your body in oil prevented the buildup of dirt and bacteria, which could lead to skin disease and boils. Since there was no soap, the patrons would cover themselves in things like flour and scrape it off to remove dirt and dead skin. It's similar to how modern-day dermatologists recommend exfoliating your skin. Even if you don't suffer from a skin condition like eczema or psoriasis, removing the top layer of dead skin cells can be beneficial. Regular oiling and scraping also prevented ingrown hairs. Another benefit of regular oiling and scraping. In fact, the Romans were so convinced of the health benefits of covering themselves in oil. Instead of bathing in water that they believed it could cure skin ailments, certain oils were thought to help treat sores, burns, frostbite, insect bites, rashes, and baldness. Oil was also thought to help strengthen the bones and joints. Massaging oil onto the body could alleviate joint pain, while certain oils could even reduce inflammation. So while we may think covering yourself in oil instead of bathing is a bit weird, it actually has several health benefits. If you've ever taken a cold plunge or ice bath, you know how uncomfortable it can feel on your skin. Bathing in cold water can constrict your blood vessels, causing your skin to appear pale. Once you get out of the bath, your body reacts by warming up the surface of your skin, resulting in a rosy glow. This increase in blood flow stimulates collagen production, giving your skin a youthful appearance. Cold plunges are supposed to tighten your skin and increase alertness, energy levels, and metabolism. On the other hand, hot baths have the opposite effect. Your body reacts to the heat by dilating your blood vessels, causing your skin to become flushed. Hot baths are said to relax your muscles and relieve stress. Whether the Romans bathed in oil or water, it was important for them to cleanse themselves. It was a symbol of order and civilization. Romans associated bathing with cleanliness and hygiene, just as Greeks did. To the Romans, cleanliness was directly related to the concept of civilization. They saw barbarians as dirty and uncivilized because they didn't bathe like the Romans did. However, the Romans weren't totally correct when it came to cleanliness. While bathing was important, the real unsanitary part of Roman life was the sewage system. Yes, while the aqueducts are impressive and brought clean water to the city, the sewage system was equally advanced and carried waste away from the city center to the sewers. The problem was, the pipes often got clogged, creating a breeding ground for mosquitoes and disease. The stench coming from the sewers could be overpowering and a public health hazard. Eventually, the Emperor Nero banned baths within the city limits to prevent the sewage system from overflowing. Another downside to bathing in oil instead of water was the cost. Oil was expensive, and not every Roman could afford to cover themselves in it on a regular basis. Not to mention, it was also smelly. The oil would eventually go bad and become rancid, leaving the patrons smelling like old gym socks. On the flip side, a trip to the baths was a community event, and did cost as much as buying oil every time you needed to get clean. The only major downside to bathing in water was that it required a lot of it. In drought years, this could be a challenge, but overall, the benefits of bathing in water outweighed the cons. Bathing in oil instead of water was probably a little less common than we've led you to believe. After all, there is no evidence that any Roman emperor ever recommended bathing in oil. Bathing in oil was probably a practice limited to those who had easy access to large quantities of oil and perhaps a slave to help them cover themselves in it. For everyone else, it was off to the bathhouses twice a week. Thanks for watching. What do you think of the ancient Romans who bathed in oil instead of water? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss out on future videos. See you next time.